Welcome. Today is going to be a little different, in some ways deeper. Before I began, I did a meditation with my teachers. Understanding this path ahead for you necessitates certain foundations. You have to believe things that are they're pretty specific and clear, and if you fight with it, you're prevented from going further, and if you embrace it, you open the way. It's not everything, it's not all the work, but you open the way. This is the theme today. We're going to be talking about the lock. This is a very real metaphor. It's closer to the truth than you might expect. The way to embrace it necessitates that you accept certain foundations, and one of them is this. There is a spiritual school. It's not the only presence of its kind, but it is very old. And in the foundations of this school is a lineage that transcends thousands of years. To embrace it, you have to be open to embracing yourself. So all of these themes interweave. You can't go further in one without going further in another, which is why we have to dance between them. And that is the challenge we take on today. Some of you are here for the first time. Welcome. Your presence is both a blessing, and in certain specific cases, it's apparently been foretold. Those of you who know me, who've been around for a while, know that I have not said this before. I was just invited to say, some of those of you who are seeing this for the first time, I invite you to realize this is a contract. You're showing up at this time in my life together because I need your help. We need your help. We're building something that, this is awesome. This is awesome. The path ahead is very special, and you are both welcome here. And I invite you to tune in and realize, you know if I'm speaking to you. Don't forget it. Trust it. It's one of the most crucial steps to continuing, that you be able to trust your spirit's message more than the doubts of your mind. So, I want to invite you to make a commitment that you may or may not center in your lives. All of you. The love you share with the people you're close to is more important than anything else. There is no calling, there is no dream, there is no success in this world that is more important than loving the people you're closest to. Now, sometimes you can't measure that. Sometimes you are literally closer to people who are not supposed to be here for the rest of your life. Sometimes people are here for a chapter or even just an event that's really intense. This is a theme you could come to recognize, that it is indeed some relationships are more temporary than others. And sharing love, period, is more important than any theme, any idea, any transcendence, any achievement. You are never above it. You are never beyond it. You are never more enlightened in a way that means you're above being in your family with those who are closest to you. This is something that's true on Deneb. This is something that's true in every time on Earth. This is something that's true everywhere you go in the universe. Don't get strung out. These are intense themes, and to the extent I'm speaking to you in your personal experience, particularly today, understand that one of the greatest measures you can retain is, are you doing the laundry? Are you cleaning the dishes? Are you able to rest with the people you love? Because nothing is more important. In fact, I invite you to center this, because if you don't set the intention to have a more transcendent relationship, a more loving relationship with the people who are in your everyday life, you might not get it. I'm sitting in the home of my mother-in-law. Many people use another term in America, which is not conducive to kindness and care. mother-in-law is this legal binding name that, for heaven's sakes, when's the last time that you felt more love for someone who the law compelled you to be near? If you don't set the intention to transcend archetypal negative relationships, you won't. Nothing will make you. No one's arriving to force you to be a better person in this life. You have to set the standards yourself. First step, set the standards to love the people who are closest to you in your life as well as you can, and then do the work to make it true. Next, this is about standards in so many ways. So now we're going to shift it into standards for yourself. I'm inviting you to embrace the challenge to get beyond the limitations that you've known as normal in this life. And to stay awake and alive in this vibrancy is it's hard. The kind of work this necessitates is a discipline that transcends anything that you've experienced as discipline. We're going beyond the rules of the past. You can't use sports or martial arts metaphors to make sense of this. In many ways, it's harder because you can't practice violence. In fact, you can't even practice an oppositional mind. You're practicing being awake, which means you're a force of love in the world that knows how to hold space for people when they wake up too fast. And that's what we're looking at for at least another decade. Is awakening forces are going to continue to cannonball through the world. And the pace and the intensity are ratcheting up, which means those of us who practice and are prepared and know how to navigate through the vibrational shifts are far more capable of internalizing the new energies that are coming in, which means you can embrace them, you can make them a part of yourself. And indeed, this is the invitation. However, for those who are not prepared, internalizing vibrant, alive spiritual energy looks like bringing all their problems to the surface all at once. For you to be a force of good, of love, of healing in their lives, in the world in general, you need to set some high standards of discipline. So, I'd like you to consider this in a way that can begin with a little humor. When I was in middle school, I remember they challenged us to learn to type. We had to learn to type and pass a certain test. And during the test, they told us ahead of time they were going to cover our hands with a piece of paper so you couldn't see what you were typing. I remember this being intimidating. That seemed really hard at the time. It was motivating. By the end of that course, I was able to pass the test. I can still type. I wouldn't pay me to do it as my full-time job, but I can type well. I can type quickly. I can type almost as quickly as I think it, which is a real powerful gift, which increasingly we don't need. A couple of years ago, I realized I couldn't type the numbers. Some of you have heard me share this example before. I couldn't type the numbers. They didn't test me on that. 40 years ago, they didn't challenge me to learn that, and I never did. If you don't challenge yourself to learn certain things, you're not going to learn them. And if you don't learn certain things, you're not going to make it through this time well. If you're here now, make a commitment to stick with it. This is not an entertainment YouTube site. I am not racking my brain every week to try to create the most viral theme. Increasingly, I'd like to, but that's never been the purpose. We've been building something here and the foundations are laid. You can learn a lot by studying. And the most important place to begin is the key ring. If you have not memorized the key ring, memorize it. It's 12 chakras and a pattern through them. This pattern can literally save your life. In times of extreme chaos, this pattern will bring you into coherence. And if you don't know what I'm talking about yet, trust, please. This pattern can liberate you from struggling with intense negative forces quickly. A round through in a minute can be enough. 3 minutes can set you up for hours in many cases. And if you go deeper and practice the longer versions of the meditation, you can do more to affect your spiritual health than in any other system I could give you without being with you. So please set the intention to memorize it and be familiar with it. It's something you could easily benefit from using several times a day, certainly several times a week. Challenge yourself to learn it. It's the best gift I can give you. Lastly, the gifts of this are unparalleled. This is the best insight that a spiritual mystery school that's been around for thousands of years had to give me. And I've dedicated my entire life to using it well, teaching it, and handing it on. So please visit the website and peruse through. We have a community, there are courses, and I offer sessions. In fact, I'd really like those of you who are financially flowing, you're good with abundance, and you would like support in your lives, consider signing up for weekly sessions. In many ways, you could consider it dual. This is the best work you're going to find in many cases. And I can support you as a spiritual coach to live the life you truly want. And you'll be sponsoring this work for others. I don't want ads in the middle of the videos. I don't want sponsors. Perhaps it'll change, but I really want as clear a support for people as possible through this medium. I don't want to have to change how I share what needs to be shared. This is medicine. If that changes in the future, if someone can sponsor in a way that's true to the integrity of this, awesome. But that could be you if you sign up to do regular work and pay for it. And if you can do that, please consider it. All right, let's dive in. Who's here? I cannot see it all. I'm on our laptop this week, so it's going to be tough. Angie, thank you. I could guess, right? Angie, it's good to see you. Sarah, Trevor, Fatima. It makes me feel so much better knowing you're here, guys. Anthony, grand rising to you. This is getting fun, peoples. This is getting exciting. I want to share more of an incredible story with you. And to be clear, I'm enjoying this waking up. I feel like wildflower fire is a sprout that's just breaking through the ground. We've been spending years growing some roots to be ready for this. And you guys who are here, who have been here, are a big part of that. For those of you who are new, please be open to talking to these folks who are here. They can help you navigate what we're doing, how you can proceed. They're exceptional human beings. The energy that we have attracted with wildflower fire, it's bringing out some of the coolest, most inspiring people in the world together. I love it. What we're doing has deep purpose that goes beyond what I think any of us can anticipate, but it's time to share more. I'm glad to be able to tell you that my own teachers have been teaching me a lot before I share, and they've always been quite clear on what I'm supposed to learn with until I have it down and focused well enough that I'm ready to share it with you and receive, give you the space to learn these things through me, which is a very different experience than me learning it from my teachers directly. Heart, heart, heart. Where to begin? I was learning to hear messages from this school. I didn't know who they were. I knew I trusted it. And of course, I, I was terrified. I was young. I was in my early 20s and I was starting to get telepathic messages in the middle of normal life. Sometimes they came when I was high, which made it easier to just kind of like set everything else aside and take it. And yet then I'd wake up in the next day and I really, really wanted to keep believing. After a while, I had this incredible moment when I felt the presence of multiple guides at once. And I went to the computer and I typed down what they were telling me, and it was something about it was so real. And it took me beyond the limitations of the world I knew. It was far more interesting than anything else that I knew of. Any book I'd read, any story I'd heard. After years, 2 years of this, I started to lose my ability to focus on the world around me. I haphazardly told my boss I had to leave my job and then had no backup plan. And I was terrified for a month, and then I got another job. And for 1 week of this new job, for more money, I fell apart. My mind began to fracture. I began to feel so much energy that I didn't think I needed to sleep or eat for about a week. And it got more and more extreme. Now, I want to take this opportunity to tell you that in retrospect, I've learned that in many ways I was tapping into something that's true. As we awaken and get in touch with our past lives and the full range of our consciousness here on earth, we do need to sleep less. We do. Sleep creates space to be present with those parts of ourselves that we are not able to bring into conscious reality. So, as you become more thoroughly identified with your soul beyond this life, you don't have to sleep as much. And you are able to tap into energy that transcends many of the normal limitations. But there's a difference between that being true and knowing how to handle it when it surges into your reality. And I did not know how to handle it. I became obsessed with being in a in a chamber. And this chamber was safety itself. This chamber was truth itself. I couldn't make sense of it, and I started like thinking. I started researching going into sensory deprivation tanks in New York City. It didn't come through. I didn't find anything that I wanted to just show up and be like, I need to get into one of those for like the next 24 hours, and it was not enough. My mind kind of fell apart, and I collapsed and had to leave the city. I lost my job, my girlfriend, everything in my life. And it took years to get in touch with a teacher who she introduced me to past lives. She is not with us anymore, but she comes and visits me fairly regularly. She taught me to get in touch with the time that I had been in the initiation chamber of the Great Pyramid. In that chamber, we were reconnected with our spirits from a much deeper consciousness in humanity. For this to make sense, you have to have an overall understanding of how humanity itself works, which is why we keep going to these big themes. And I'm happy to invite you into beginning to interpret this through the lens of the Kybalion. Now, I haven't been permitted to teach this in the past because I had to be taught how to be a teacher of this work on the level that we're about to embark on. And I'm happy to say they've graduated me so we can begin. This is such a great gift because the Kybalion itself is a set of keys that helps you unlock understanding for this reality in a very deep and real way. And today we're going to go through how to understand this and relate to it so you can begin a new chapter of study in a way that's going to you're going to love this. The metaphor that makes the most sense to me is a combination lock. Now, it's not the image we used on the video this week because frankly, I like the image that's there. But I want you to think if you've ever seen a bike lock that has rings, it has, a certain number of rings and you have to line up the numbers on all of them. What's happening inside is there's a disc and there's one spot under one number that's open. If you get all the numbers with the open notches aligned, you can just pull this key out. None of the teeth will catch. I want you to conceive this. Rewind it, pause it, think about it until you understand what I'm saying. Imagine there are 7 discs. Each of them has to be lined up correctly. If they're not lined up correctly, you can't separate that lock. Importantly, if one of those discs is not lined up correctly, you can't separate the lock. In order to recognize which of those discs is off, you have to have an incredible level of subtlety. At first glance, at first feel, you're not going to be able to tell. You'll just know it doesn't open. You can't tell the difference between 6 of them being off and 1 of them being off. This is how our reality works. At that time in my life, 25 years ago, they taught me how to line up those locks. They taught me how to align my consciousness in a way that I could open that lock and gain entrance into their consciousness. In order to do that, you have to become a safecracker. Now, I don't know a ton about this work, but you take a stethoscope and you put it on the safe and you listen. You're turning each of these locks, and there are indications when they line up right. There's a space where you can hear the click. This is the spiritual work you need to do, and I invite you to do it in relation to the Kybalion's themes. This relates deeply with the 12 chakras. The gift of it is the 12 chakras are ideal to set up on your own. So if you do the work through the 12 chakra systems that are lined up in the key ring, the Chakras in the Key Ring meditation playlist, you'll be able to accomplish as much as possible without anyone else directly participating in your process. The work can be done focused in either way. You can do it first strictly through these mental alignments that we're going to talk about today with the Kybalion. If you do it that way, you're basically reverse engineering it for the chakras, and it becomes that much easier to do it through the chakras. If you do it through the chakras and lining up the 12 themes in your life through your energy centers, you're going to be just prepared to align these themes, and many of you will be as we talk through them today. Now, let me offer the disclaimer yet again. What we're talking about here is waking you up. It's a dicey balance between medicine for an awakening that's already started and giving you insight and work to do that will initiate this process if it hasn't begun already. It's both. So you are the only one capable of saying, hey, I got to chill out. I got to take a step back. When I tell you it's best if you do this work at least 3 times, every other day, essentially every other day, it is. And you're the only one that knows if you're getting overwhelmed, do you need to do more of the work to center you, or do you need to chill out and take a rest in things that you used to love, take a rest in things that are familiar to you, play a computer game, go on a walk in the woods, do the things that you loved when you were 12. Sometimes grounding means doing the things you loved when you were 12. Doing the things that reach back into your past and give you a sense of comfort and safety and familiarity. You are the only one who can make these judgments. Understand the reason you're doing this is because there is no way back. Humanity is waking up overall. Are you going to be on the edge of this awakening process, or are you going to linger behind? If you're here at all, you want to be where you are. In some level, you want to, and/or you can't help it. So you're doing this work to become so confident and centered in the awakening process itself that you don't just wake up, you get out of bed, and you start to do stuff. The consequences of that are extreme. If you look at the whole Spiritual Gateway playlist that we've recently posted in the past couple months, we're talking about you becoming someone who's awake in a world where you're surrounded by people you love who are not thoroughly awake in the same ways. It doesn't mean you're better than them. It doesn't mean you're ahead. This is not a linear game. This is not a race. It means you got up, right? If you get up an hour before your family, does it mean you're more evolved than they are? No, it just means you're awake. What are you going to do with it? The invitation that you're being given repeatedly through me and through the world herself is to become someone who can be the greatest service to this world possible because you are needed and it will be increasingly obvious why and how you're needed. What we're doing is we're aligning the first principle, mentalism. Mentalism is the recognition that our mind transcends this reality. Our mind transcends the world we're in right now. And you chose to incarnate into this. You have to start here. If you don't believe it, it's like one of those locks is off and you're not gonna make progress. If you don't have direct conscious evidence in your own experience yet, hey, look forward to it. Don't anticipate it in a way that you form an idea of what it is that's sort of artificial. That's why we're trying to be as simple as possible. Just respect. You existed before you came to this planet. You came to this planet, you incarnated to forget. Now, one of the fun factors of this that you can put together, just contemplate it like it's a puzzle, like it's a cosmic puzzle. You were conscious before you came here. You didn't speak English. Your consciousness worked in a different way. This is one of the gifts of being born in this way. Think about this. If you agree to take the draft of forgetfulness, it means you're forgetting your normal way of conscious to become a baby. The process of doing this has purpose. You're being ushered into a new way of being conscious that has far more importance and possibility than you can respect and understand from within the process until you do a fair amount of work. So we're incarnating into human consciousness and given language. Embedded in our language, embedded in our culture, are ways of being, patterns of being conscious that contain many layers of gift, of possibility that will become increasingly apparent in the future. Why it matters. Essentially, you were not capable of being conscious. You chose to incarnate, you incarnate, you forget everything, and you recenter your consciousness in an entirely new way. This is cool. This will unleash a vast range of possibilities. You have to line this principle up to unlock. Now, in this is the recognition that what we're essentially doing is we're participating in someone else's plan. We're participating in someone else's planet. Within this planet, there are certain rules that are true and unique to this place. So you need to engage with Gaia as a planet, as she has created this potential. Now, some people are getting in touch with this and they call it the matrix. This is one of the first things I'm going to encourage you to avoid. All right. Don't be one of these like spiritual, like matrix warriors who are like, you can't suffocate me behind your artificial reality. What they're doing is they're starting to see elements of the truth, but then they're fighting. As soon as you fight something, that which you resist persists. It's not necessary. In fact, it's not good. You don't fight quicksand. You graciously claim your center and consciously and intentionally figure out the wisest way to get out. You struggle too much, you get yourself more stuck. Your struggle gets you stuck inside it. Now, there is something to get out of. There's an artificial reality built in lies that deny the truth that we are spiritual beings living a human experience. The entire system of lying is about being asleep. Gentle your opposition. No one is lying to you. I don't even listen to a single video that has "they lied to you" in it. Like, don't ever listen to any of it. None of it. Because no matter what they contain, no matter what they're teaching you that has some relevance, the initial premise that there's some nebulous conspiracy designed to suffocate you is bullshit. The forces that are ultimately in control of this planet are loving. Now, the systems we're in contain an awful lot of stuckness that you have to work hard to get out of. You do. But I repeat, it's more like quicksand than a conspiracy of lies that you have to fight against. Get out. They're lying. They're asleep. You don't fight someone for being asleep. You don't hate someone for being asleep. And there's no awake group of hateful people who are trying to control you. There's just subconscious forces gathered together, greed pulled together, fear pulled together. It's not an individual at the helm. Rupert Murdoch is asleep. They're all just channeling negative vibes. That's all they're doing. They're not more powerful than you are when you wake up, but you have to wake up and own your presence and just consciously figure out how to get out of the quicksand. This is the value of aligning your mind. When you know yourself as an eternal being who chose to be here, you start to get in touch with what is your job, what is your calling. And your calling is inspiring. Your calling is loving. Your calling is hopeful. Your calling does not begin with, they can't control me. Now, look, I value you. I respect you. I honor you for being a fierce, they can't control me. I was a fierce, you can't control me. I spent an awful lot of time doing that. And there's a lot of true passion in it, but it's still pretty much an asleep approach. The deeper way is really and truly to put love first. You don't put love first with a massive shield around yourself that says, who's going to fucking fight me? That love is the most awesome thing. You stay with love. You stay centered in love. And this is about aligning your mind. And if you don't align your mental values in this way, you're not going to unlock the system. You won't gain entrance to the temple. Now understand, this is the final important mental alignment. There is a temple. There is a temple. It's a space. It's a space of consciousness that you can gain entrance to. That's why you're doing this work. When you gain entrance to this space, you're fed by it. It becomes your home. More importantly, there's guidance that helps you navigate what it is to become conscious of yourself beyond this lifetime, what it is to begin to receive the interjection of memories from beyond this lifetime. That's what was happening to me 25 years ago. I was allowing enough of my consciousness to remember. I was lining up enough of these principles that I was starting to see some of the more intense memories from other lifetimes. That it's a very, very confusing process. My heart breaks for how many people get drugged and shut down as they begin to remember these things, but they don't know how to trust enough of the love that's present to help guide you through such a time in a way that's conscious. You can't look like a wreck. You can't be a wreck on a regular basis and have this be a valuable experience. It's honestly better in some cases you just go back to sleep. And believe me, it's possible. It could be better that you go back to sleep if you wake up too much to memories of being a Viking, where you have a consciousness that really reinforces to you, just knock them down. If you have that mental presence in your mind, that's debilitating. That's no way to live. You have to understand there are reasons we forget past lives. You don't want to be present with everyone you've been in other lifetimes all the time because you live by very different rules in other lifetimes. And in some of those situations, it was much more normal to be violent in response to challenge and threat. You don't want that person advising you as a prominent member of your mind on a regular basis, so you're going to make some bad decisions. So the goal here is to tap into the best, tap into the wisdom, tap into the experience, but do so in a way that's conducive to leading a wonderful life now in this season of your life. Now, to get there, you have to understand why the now is so important. There is something happening. As above, so below. This power cannot be underestimated. It's beautiful. There are shifts occurring in the patterns that affect the whole world that are affecting each of us individually. And as I reinforce frequently, you could be a little ahead of the curve. You could be at the cusp, inviting in the new power and saying, yes, please bring it. I want this. Or you can linger behind and cling to old patterns. And some of the old patterns will remain for a while, holding people together, watching old sitcoms in a way that can help you feel grounded. In fact, maybe you need to do that sometimes. There's no shame in it. When you're navigating between being on the cusp and embracing the new spiritual energy early, you have a degree of influence over the process. So you can say, yes, bring it. And the energy will come more to you because you're asking for it. Now, this is not an absolute power. You can't say, now hit me with lightning, but you can find the way to go out in the field. You can recognize there's a rainstorm. You can go into the field and you can open up and say, bring the lightning. In order to do that, you got to be ready to handle it, which circles you around to do the work. The best way I know how to support you in this is get good with that key ring, memorize it, and then learn the yoga that goes with it. The systems that they've given me to teach you are the best way we can help people who are maybe never going to say hi. I got a message once from someone who said they'd been doing my work every day for months. I never even heard from them before. Many of you are likely doing this. If you are going to do this and not participate in the community and not tap in, share the changes you're going through, you have every right to. The key ring and the practices associated with it are the best way I can help you if you're not going to intentionally participate in the communities we're creating. So think about that. I didn't make that choice. I prayed for it. I said, show me the greatest service I could give the world. Show me the greatest service I could give the world. Show me the greatest service I could give the world. And then I went out into those fields during the rainstorm and I got hit by lightning. And I got floored and I got knocked out and I got fried and I couldn't sleep for days. And I got up again and I said, okay, teach me how to handle it when the lightning hits me. Teach me how to handle it when the lightning hits me. And over the course of a long period of time, they gave me these practices, which were the answer to both questions, both prayers. They taught me how to handle the lightning, and they taught me how to teach you how to handle the lightning. Now, this lightning is a wild flowing fire, and it's a wild flowing fire that's moving around the earth. I want you to become increasingly aware that this is how it's always worked, and this is a system, a pattern, a rhythm that's heating up. So you can imagine currents of light dancing around the world, and they go through different places. They'll touch America and then they'll move over and they'll touch Moscow. This flow could be tracked if we were paying enough attention. I encourage you, by the way, those of you who have any influence on these levels, electromagnetic measurements are a good indicator. They're the tip of the iceberg. They're where fluctuations will be registered. They're not always the core mechanism that's changing, but the electromagnetic fields that we know how to measure do register the shifts in a way that can unveil deeper currents. So when these surges go through, it's important to recognize this is not you. This is about aligning your mind to get this lock lined up. If you don't realize that you're being influenced by a global current and you internalize it, what's going to happen is the global current will wake up energy in you. It'll wake up energy in everyone. Some people's natural reaction will be to numb it or block it, and they will have some capacity to do this. So you won't see them behaving much differently, even though they're a little more tired because they're using all their energy to hold it at bay. You will suddenly be brought to life in a way that brings your problems to the surface. This is a normal, healthy mechanism that's designed to get you to relieve burdens that you bear. Once you know how to let the energy move through you, so you're not just trying to block it, it's moving through, it dredges you. So all of a sudden, you're going to be immersed in a problem you had with your parents. You're going to remember arguments you had with your father when you were a kid. So if you misinterpret what's going on and just think you have issues with your father and that's all you're stuck in, you will miss the global current. You will not understand yourself as part of a bigger story. And this, you're not lining up the lock. Now, you still might accomplish something, but it's a much more tedious approach. It'll take longer. You could spend an awful lot of time poring over the same problems in the same way and not actually accomplish anything. But if you feel the hopefulness that there's a global awakening current dancing around the planet and it's just touched your community and you start looking for those signs, it'll pull you out of an egocentric obsession with yourself. So you'll see your challenge in relation to other people and you'll find the most graceful ways through, and you'll be more available to support others. And you'll start to commit to becoming the kind of person who can support others, which means you'll help generate the company that you most yearn for, that is most true to your heart. You can embrace this with an incredible amount of inspiration. It's really exciting. But in the process, what we're seeing are a lot more challenges come to the surface. Conflicts, greeds, dysfunctional patterns within every culture get accentuated when spiritual energy comes to the surface. Now, for that to make sense, you have to understand this is a vibration. This is a vibration that's sets of vibrations that are moving through the world. And these vibrations have always been given to us in relationship to their impact. Gaia and the many, many angels and guides that make the system work have always been well aware that there are consequences to heightening spiritual energy. It's a quickening. Quickenings have been occurring for a long time. We just happen to be at the cusp of a much deeper, more powerful one. In many ways, the most fundamental you'll be able to access and learn about. But in the late 1800s, there was a spiritualist revolution in the world, and it certainly impacted the Americas greatly as teachers went over to India and brought back wisdom, brought back knowledge of chakras. Theosophies brought back knowledge of the chakras. And that was among many other things they were doing. They went to Egypt, they went to many cultures, and they carried the intention to integrate. And this is crucial. They were carrying the intention to integrate the gifts of many different cultures. And that intention alone was very profound. There is a direct relationship between the awakening energy that was moving through them and what was happening in the world. What started was the world. The world was introducing heightened vibrations, dancing then. That woke individuals up. Some individuals went into the field, said, bring down the lightning. They received it. They learned to embody it. Some didn't. Some were crushed by it. Some succeeded. Some embraced it. And then they became a stand that called in more liquid living fire. By the early 1900s, this turned into war. There's a direct relationship. Now, those wars needed to happen in a very terrifying and terrible way. They were destroying the old world. And that's an awful consequence. And believe me when I tell you, the spiritual guides of this earth do not relish in it. Now, there are war beings that play that, but they're not in charge. They do what they do. They serve their function when their time is there. The willingness to allow these changes to happen comes from a space where you recognize that death and suffering and agony are not an end in and of themselves. They are the beginning of something new. You're going to be reborn. You're going to be liberated to have another opportunity. So to the extent that you stare at the world and you say, how could suffering exist? How could they let World War I happen? You have to appreciate, because they have zero question. They have zero doubt that everyone who suffers and dies in those ways will be given an opportunity to live again and live with less violence and less hatefulness in their mind. But in order to embrace that, you have to have a different relationship with the currents. You have to recognize that the currents ebb and flow. They calmed down and allowed us to move through the world wars. Now they're heightening again on some of the same intense levels. But the potential now is to move through it actually with a lot less war. Truly. Trust me when I tell you this. One of the reasons so many people are apocalyptic during these times is some of the same forces are at work that were at work for World War I and World War II during that era. However, the fields of consciousness on the earth have changed enough so we don't have to suffer as much this time. Some of it is still up to us, though, which means some of it is still up to you. You can join setting the intention to put your heart and soul into working to channel through these energies in a healthy, in a good way. I navigate through some of the most intense violences imaginable. I navigate through some of the most intense energies that, quite frankly, in other humans, cause them to be violent. I know how to not be violent when it moves through me. But you could very literally call them violent energies. They are energies that refuse to lose. They are energies that birth through me into the world. They're very fierce. And if the wrong person embodies an energy like this, they fight with their fists, with weapons. You are the difference in this. The energy isn't the difference. The same energy can cause different reactions. You are the difference. You becoming a vessel of goodness who takes in more intensity, more presence with the commitment to be loving. That's the difference. You doing the work to become that person is the difference. You doing the work to refuse to nurture any space in your mind that hates, that revels in the kind of victory that causes suffering. This is the work. This is the work of the new world. And this work and the number of people who are doing this work is the reason we can move through the next 10 years with less violence than you may anticipate. It's crucial. It's crucial. Now, this brings us to vibrational awareness. And it doesn't look like we're going to get through all 7 of these principles with the same depth I hoped, because there's so much. So we're going to get through vibrational and rhythm, and then we're going to take vibrational and polarity, and then we're going to take a pause and save the next 3 for next week. Vibrational awareness is key, crucial. This is the new life. And the gift is simple. Once you learn to sense with your vibrations, it's like opening and closing your eyes. So I want to invite you into, even if you don't know how to feel energy yet, even if you don't know how to feel vibration around you yet, see into a time when you do. And I'm telling you that it'll become something like you have to learn to keep your eyes open. And there's an intentionality to this. You have to try to pay attention to the vibration. If you don't try, you won't register it. You know what'll happen? Stress, anxiety. Stress and anxiety, headaches, are all signs of someone who has an incredible vibrational potential. You have an incredible potential to register, to see, to sense reality through vibration, but you're not navigating with it yet. You're not making your choices with it yet. There is a space in which you can love yourself and be humorous as you realize how badly you're doing. Because I don't know that there's another way to wake up other than to recognize you're not doing well based on these measures. How often do you watch something without paying attention to how it's affecting your vibration? You can have your entire mental focus on the arc of a story or the arc of whatever YouTube short you're watching without paying any attention at all to what it's doing to your body. Oof. In many ways, again, I would invite you, it's funny that it's even possible why would you pay attention to something that makes you feel like shit? Because you're not paying attention to how you feel. You see this gift. Once you learn to prioritize how you feel through resonance, you start to make decisions in an entirely different way, and it starts to get easy. I'm inviting you to anticipate a time when it's easy. The reason it's easy is because I'm not going to do that. That makes me feel like shit. But if you're numbing out how you feel, that weight doesn't have as much value in your consciousness. Now, the simplest gift of this, the simplest way to do this is to start with your heart. You start with your heart you're going to check in frequently with how your heart feels. Now, one of the reasons you're going to do this frequently is it is the center. The vibration in your heart affects the rest of your body through the blood. What you nurture in vibration in your heart affects the vibration of your blood. Really, the heart chakra, yes, it's a little off center, but it is directly transforming the entire pool of blood in your heart. And once that vibration has changed the vibration of the blood in your heart, it spreads to every cell in your body. So your heart is the simplest way you can affect your overall health. You breathe in your heart. And I invite you from now on, every time you see this class, every time you join us, whenever I pause and whenever you feel the need to pause and breathe in your heart. Now, I will take this opportunity to invite you to do something I never do. If you haven't, I urge you to consider clicking the notification bell. This is major medicine for your life, and making a commitment to stick with us through this time means you have to come back again and again for yourself. These systems, the medicine that's moving through wild flowing fire to activate wild flowing fire in you, don't work unless you nurture it and you keep coming back. So I urge you to consider that. Make a commitment out of joining us. It will continue to bless you to do so. Now, vibrational awareness has this great gift that you have to move into through some resistance. One of the major reasons you will feel disinclined to become more aware vibrationally is, in many, many cases, your first awareness of vibration will be stress. If I suggest that you can enhance the vibrational experience in your life, and the first thing that gets enhanced is discomfort and even pain, you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why would I do that? So this is a real challenge. And again, in some ways, all you can do is see beyond it to a time when you will be liberated by the work you've done. Because at first, it's not as liberating. At first, what's happening is you feel stress, you feel anxiety in your solar plexus, often centered. You feel burdens in your shoulder. You feel pain in your head because your spirit is trying to get your attention. It's trying to tell you things are not working right. If you treat the problem as if the problem is the stress, as if the problem is the headache, you're entirely missing the point. That's like saying, when I stick my hand in the fire, the problem is the pain. The problem is not the pain. The problem is that you're burning your hand. You feel anxiety because there's a contrast of pressures on yourself. Looking into the contrast of pressures is designed to show you how you can make better choices. You feel anxiety in circumstances where you could ultimately stare more honestly at the forces that are playing upon you in your life, at the choices that you're making, and make clearer choices. Say no to something, handle something more quickly, handle something first, and then move on to the other things so they're not wrestling in your consciousness. When you stare honestly into the difficult and uncomfortable feelings that you feel vibrationally, you get a more clear understanding of yourself. So committing to do this work is worth it. It is more uncomfortable, and you have to get out of this mindset of make the pain stop. Of course, you want to make the pain stop. But you want to do so because you're leading a fundamentally more healthy, flowing life. Not just because you learn how to numb it out effectively with this, that, or the other addiction or medication, quote unquote. Now, I actually think we're going to pause there. I'm going to chill this out because I don't want to feel like we're just stressing and pushing it all together at the end. Those are just 3 of the Kybalion's 7 principles. I'm going to take a look and see if you have any questions. So pause and please ask questions about any of the themes we've addressed so far today, anything that might be lingering that is related to these subjects. And I will answer those, and or I will go through my consciousness and see if I've missed anything rather than moving on to polarity yet. Oh, it's awful hard for me to read. That's too bad. Thank you, Trevor. Okay. So first of all, I'll end with a little, just a basic outline of the history. But what we've addressed are mentalism, correspondence, and vibration. These are the first 3 principles of the Kybalion that we are sharing today. If you look at the video from last week, Secrets to Unlocking the Kybalion, the unlocking process here is actually the Kybalion as keys itself, and we're unlocking presence, connection to the temple. The encouragement I've been given is to refer to this as Thoth's temple. It's broader than that. He doesn't exactly see it that way, but people need a metaphor that they can understand to start with. It begins as if you're talking just to Thoth. And what happens as you unlock it is you get welcomed into a space of many consciousnesses, and you get given teachers and even mentors. There are different presences that it's more like a college. You get handed around, And at first they do it that way. You're blind, you're confused, you're numb, and you're taught to move from being to being. And they they show you where to go. The goal is to get into this consciousness so you're surrounded by it and you're no longer damaged by the influence of other forces that may or may not have any of your best interest at heart. So what you're doing here is you're lining up these 7 principles in order to be centered for the rest of your life in a life of service and love, so you don't have to make the same kind of mistakes. This is the same work we're doing anyway through the chakras, as I iterate. The reason it's valuable to see it this way is as you line up your chakras in a healthy way, you can learn to interpret what's happening through this lens. It's kind of like, for musicians, this metaphor will work. The Kybalion is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and the 12 chakra system is the notes. So these systems are working together. And if that feels confusing for now, please appreciate you don't have to understand all of it, but it is joyful and empowering to dive into it and to learn more. The Kybalion itself came out of the spiritualist revolution. It was channeled by initiates who were in touch with this temple. The spiritualist movement of the late 1800s and on into the early 1900s influenced a lot of the most amazing changes that happened in the world, some of which you know about and some of which you don't. Many of the teachers never presented themselves publicly. So they learned this way, but they were taught not to say so because the world was not ready for that. Now, those of us who are in touch directly are being encouraged to communicate it more clearly. And some people are in between, like they are being taught by this temple, but they aren't someone whose job it is to teach the overall mechanics and dynamics of what's happening. So they're simply spreading knowledge that needs to be spread. The trust in this is that we're being looked out for. There's a beautiful, loving guidance that is present, that is wise, that is more aware than we are, and that is leading us. And the more you want to be led, the more you want to be guided, the more you say, I want to serve, the more effectively it works. So there are things you can do to reinforce your commitment. And it begins here. It begins here. This work at Wildflower Fire is a core space. You don't have to fumble around in the dark. We'll keep letting you know some of the basic practices you could do that will keep you in tune. Now, another major document to look into, same time, same school of thought, Emerald Tablets of Thoth. If you haven't looked into this, we're going to be moving on to that soon as a theme to look at. I have been doing this work for years. I was told pretty clearly, do this, this, and this. They've given me leeway to try my own things. Guess what? That'll work very well. When they tell me to do something, it's clear what I need to do, and it works. And so we've got these foundations down, and they wanted the foundations to be very clear. Now I'm being invited to address themes that are relevant to others, starting with the Kybalion, the Emerald Tablets as well. These are themes that a lot of more people pay attention to, and they all fit together. There's nothing contradictory here. These are all parts of the school of Hermetic thought. Hermeticism, Hermes, Thoth. This is really exciting. So this is where I want to end today. We're going to move on towards this, but there is a linchpin that is coming into place. It's the caduceus. The caduceus is this staff of Hermes. It's a staff. It has wings on it. We use it a lot, and you can see the energy going back and forth up. The staff, in many ways, is the integration of the themes of the Kybalion. Polarity, vibration, shape the staff to channel energy from above to below, transforms your mind, and tunes you into the rhythms of the world. The rhythms of the world expose what is your own karma and what is global changes, enabling you to make clear choices about who you'll become, at which point you begin to recognize yourself as a transcendent being beyond this lifetime, which means you no longer primarily identify as your gender. The body you're in is the role you're playing. Embrace it, love it, live it up. But remember, you are a being who transcends this lifetime. Know yourself this way. The caduceus brings this together. The caduceus centers it, and in such a humorous and incredible way. The caduceus is right in plain sight. The caduceus is the staff of Hermes. It's the symbol of medicine. And yet, our medical systems in the Western world have completely forgotten it. They are using it as their seal, but they don't address energy medicine. They've completely divorced themselves from the influence of spirit in this way. Now, certain individuals transcend that, but they have to work against the system. The system is materialist. The system is focused on the body and the mechanics of the body, so much so that they make incredible mistakes in logic. If P then Q, if this changes in your mind, doesn't mean that change induced whatever changed in your body. If this changed in your body, does not mean that's what induced the change in your mind. If you don't measure what's happening in relation to your spirit, you don't got the full story. And in many cases, you don't have the original story. Thoth is bringing this back. And the educational and medical systems are going to be confronted to embrace energetics. Think the next decade, think the rest of your life. Systems of certainly Western globalist culture are going to be challenged to reintegrate spiritual presence in these ways. And it's going to be a huge part of the story. There is a collapse in attendance in colleges. Part of it is demographic. There are fewer young people, but part of it is a loss of faith. Our colleges and universities have forgotten spirituality, and they've come up against the limits of what they can legitimately study without asking spiritual questions. They can't answer the questions they're asking, all of their departments, because they have compartmentalized their system of thought and lost the caduceus, the heart, the core, the rhythm of spirit. Spirit brings all these themes back together. And until our medical and academic systems reclaim the heart of what we are, they're going to be increasingly lost. And we're going to suffer the consequences. People in schools and people in hospitals will not get the care and the guidance that we need until we reclaim the presence of spirit. It doesn't mean that what everyone is doing in hospitals and universities is wrong. It's just, it's missing key pieces. Imagine studying a tree without paying attention to the trunk. That's what they're doing. This is the tree of life. This is the transcendent presence, the spirit that moves through our bodies, and it's waking up. And it's waking up so brightly and so intensely that no one will be able to deny it over the course of the near future. That's the work we're doing. We're tuning in early. We're getting ourselves aligned so that we can be of greatest service to enable these changes in a good way, in a healthy way. That will mean a unique calling for each of you. But to the extent you don't know what to do next, please consider making a deeper commitment here. Visit wildflowerfire.com and explore what we got going on. There's a lot of special themes that are just beginning to come to life, just breaking the surface and beginning to sprout. So that's what we're going to do next. We gather to do a shared meditation and group dialogue. I invite you to join us. Visit wildflowerfire.com. Click on the community tab. There's a link to join the weekly gathering. I will be there in a couple minutes, take a little break, and then I'll see you there. I'm sorry I've not been able to be more attentive to your comments. It's like literally very difficult for me to see in the glare. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here every week. I invite you again. Click that notification bell so you'll be notified of any new videos when the live feeds come, and you'll be reminded. And you'll be, a little more tapped in, part of what we're doing on a regular basis. So much has just begun. It's good to see you. Much love be with you and your family.